What is a red flag from an employer that people might not immediately recognize? Story 1. Having to take an online IQ test before even being considered for an interview. When I moved to Australia, I was looking for work as a language teacher. I went to monster.com and found an advert saying that they were looking for teachers for gifted children, but that I needed to take an online IQ test to apply. Needed an IQ above 125 to go for an interview. I took the test, sent in my CV and cover letter, and waited. An hour later, I got an email asking to meet at a special cafe in downtown Melbourne for the following day. So I went and noticed that this building was a Freemason building and that one needed a special pass to get in. There was a little older lady waiting for me in a tacky floral print shirt and a white fisherman's hat. Immediately, she pardoned herself for wearing that hat, explaining that it was lined with aluminum to protect her from the cell phone radiation. I think nothing of it and order a coffee. Off the bat, the old lady tells me how she has an IQ of 160 and the rarest blood type, similar to that of Tutankhamun. She goes on and on about this for a while and then begins explaining the job. She tells me that in the beginning, I wouldn't be teaching but administering tests in schools around Queensland to recruit children to special camps, where then I would be teaching. The whole thing screamed red flags, but I politely listened and got her business card if ever I had further questions. I got a proposal on the spot. I looked at the card and it said, "The Wise Ones." After looking it up, I noticed that it was a cult. I stayed as far away as I could from them. The whole situation definitely raised some red flags. From the IQ test requirement, before even getting an interview, to the secretive location. It all makes you question what is really going on. It's always important to trust your gut when something feels off. Story 2. When an employee quits or gets fired from the job and the company doesn't hire anyone new to replace them, it can be hard to tell as a red flag at first, but the temporary workload they added to your own over what was left over after the person left slowly becomes your new permanent workload, without any changes to your pay or benefits to compromise for the additional tasks. The further out it goes, without the position being filled, the larger and more obvious the red flag becomes. Someone added to this by saying, "This happened to me recently. In July, we had a guy leave, had a new guy come in from another division to take over. But here it is 6 months later and I'm still covering the former employee's workload as well as my already existing workload. I asked for a raise last month and I was told you need to take more responsibility before you are eligible for a raise. I applied to other companies and I'm getting offers for 60% more right off the bat." Story 3. Trying to rush a decision out of you once the offer is made. I once interviewed with a company where I would have been relocating across the country to work for them. There were 3 rounds of interviews and they left me completely in the dark for weeks on end between each round before inviting me to the next round within just a few days of when the interview would take place. After the final interview, there was over a month of silence from them until they made an offer, but told me I had less than 24 hours to let them know my decision. I would have been moving 2,000 miles away from home to find a place I had never been or even seen before. Interviews were completely virtual. They wanted me to start 6 days after the offer had been made. When I asked them if there was any flexibility for me to have more time to think it over or have more time to move out there, they said no. They needed the decision the next day, and if I accepted, I would be starting in less than a week. I declined the offer. Wow, that sounds like a major red flag to me. The fact that they left you in the dark for weeks between interviews and then only gave you 24 hours to decide on an offer that would have required you to relocate across the country is really shady. It's pretty clear that they aren't looking out for your best interests, and the fact that they wanted you to start so soon after the offer was made without any flexibility, it's a big no-no. It's good that you declined the offer. You deserve better than that. Story 4. I always ask the question, why is this role open? Is it a new role or am I replacing someone? Why did that person leave? This really helps you see the reaction, and if they look nervous, it's because the person who left did it because they were not happy. I also like asking how senior my team members are. If there's no one there more than 2 years, I would also be concerned. Final question, as I work in sales, I always ask, what's the KPIs and how many are actually hitting their quarterly to annual target? This also reveals if they set their targets too high, and you could expect to enter a grim working culture where you're never good enough and can always do better. Last one, I like asking about how they are working to establish a team culture as well, since this will tell you a lot if people at work are friends or just there to do their job. Someone replied to this comment saying, "These are the questions which I asked in an interview a few months ago, considering Reddit had mentioned this so many times. It's very important who you ask. So the very first round, just after understanding the position, ask the recruiter how many rounds it'll be and who you'll be talking to. It's especially important important that this question is asked to your potential direct manager. So I asked these questions in the interview to the manager, and he said the whole team had gotten a promotion. I thought this is extremely good considering they take internal growth seriously. Then he says they took promotions in other companies and basically moved out. LOL. I still ended up taking the interview till the last round just to see what kind of people run the place. When the potential manager told me that this was his second day and said he didn't know what he was doing and was asking questions from a website, I decided to run for my life. Honestly, I think you made the right decision. It sounded like the manager that you were interviewing with was giving you a way out and a hint that maybe you shouldn't work there and it's not a great environment. Story 5. A couple old senior partners, lots of young employees, and nothing in between. That means there's no opportunity to move up. They can't get people to stay and can't get lateral transfers. They work young folks for as long as they can, and the young folks leave once they figure out the company sucks. Someone added to this comment saying, "This is quite exactly what my first job out of college was like. Very small engineering consulting firm. All senior engineers/directors were in the 50s to 60s, and the CEO was mid-30s, but he was the child of the president and VP. All the other engineers were straight out of college. There was really no way to move up, and they didn't make it clear how you'd get a promotion or title change. There were so many other issues with the place. I was in and out within a year. There were a couple young people hired after me that quit within months of being hired." Story 6. There's a misery wall when walking into work. When you pass a certain point in the building, the feeling changes significantly. I was interviewing at Wayfair in the corporate office. I was in their normal waiting room, everything was fine and dandy. Then I was sent to sit outside an office near the back of the place where my interviews were going to be held. I sat there 3 minutes, looked around at people, and had a sense of dread, and left. I walked out and told the receptionist I can't do this here, it's not what I want, and left. I got called 3 times after that asking if I wanted to reschedule. They seemed very desperate. Dude, that sounds like a major bummer. It's crazy how the vibe can change so much just by walking through a building. It's like you hit this misery wall and suddenly everything feels off. It's like you could just sense the negativity in the air. I totally get why you just couldn't do it and had to bail. It's not worth it to work somewhere where you're not feeling good, and the fact that they were so desperate to reschedule, it's like they knew something was up. Story 7. I went to an interview. They had me wait in the lobby. In the 5 minutes I was sitting there, 3 employees walked past me. The first just looked at me and laughed. The second said, "Leave. Leave while you can." The third made the sign of the cross at me. Later during the interview, the hiring manager showed me the Zen room, which was a quiet room you got to go to for 10 minutes when you got too stressed out. I was offered the job and declined. Really? A Zen room? You know, maybe some employees do need a separate location to kind of decompress, but the fact that the company needs one of those at all says a lot. I don't think it's a healthy work environment if there needs to be a completely separate room that people can go to when their job stresses them out too much. Good thinking getting out of there. Story 8. From personal experience coming out of college, mechanical engineering degree, this was hands down red flag galore. This was my second real engineering job interview, so I told myself to see it through because I need the interviewing experience, and they reached out to me for an entry-level design engineering position. They made me wait for 15 minutes in a not heated breezeway in the middle of the winter. A receptionist came out 5 minutes into me waiting in the cold and asked if I need to give a 2-week notice to my current job or can I start this week. I gave a non-answer, and I thought that was also my invitation inside, but she said that the person was not ready yet and I had to continue to wait. When I was finally greeted by the manager that I'd work under, he was new to the company, 2 months at the time. He made sure I knew that for some reason. They first asked a standard, "Tell me about yourself," then pivoted to pay, saying, "Look, I understand what you might expect in terms of compensation, but please hear us out before you make your decision." Weird, that was not something I mentioned in my get to know me pitch. We do a quick tour, and by quick, I meant 2 minutes. No workers looked up from their areas as we passed through, and you could hear a pin drop. It was that silent. Next, the place is old. Inside the work area, everything looked like it was bought in the 80s. The manager casually drops, "So when you first pull into the office, leave your cell phone in your car because having it go off at your desk is grounds for termination. If something is that important, give your family the number for the receptionist and they can forward a call to you if you're not busy. Anyway, follow me. The owner wants to meet you." The owner is in his 70s and the son of the founder of the company. His personal story was nice, but after the get to know you stuff, no technical questions, he slides a folder across the table and says, "Quit your job today, start tomorrow, and I'll give you $2,000. Inside is a breakdown of their policies. 2 highlights. Doctor's visits and funerals are unexcused absences unless you take vacation for them. You are not allowed to be more than 15 minutes late twice in a calendar year, or you are subject for termination. And pay, the amount for salary was blank. So I asked about it. He stares down the manager, who looks like he saw a ghost at this point, and asks, "What do you think is fair?" I asked asked for a market rate for pay given my education and the position, and they countered with a significantly lower number, more than $25K per year, less than my market value ask, saying, "We are glad to pay you that amount at a later date, but you need to go through training and onboarding. While doing that, you aren't actually doing all the responsibilities of this role, and onboarding takes 6 months, so we can negotiate a more reasonable salary then, but for now, this is our offer." I said I understand that there are costs for training, but what does that entail to justify the pay? He said to learn the company, you need to start from the bottom your first 6 months. You'll be in the warehouse loading and unloading product from semi-trailers. I thought he was joking. He was not. I immediately said, "Thank you. I need to think this over," and walked to the door. The owner half blocks the door and says, "If you leave now, you're ruining your future. You don't understand this opportunity will set you up for life if you're willing to make sacrifices." I said I'll call you tomorrow and leave. The entire process lasted 45 minutes on the first interview. I get home and have an email from the owner saying how dare I leave the interview. If I had any level of experience, they'd start me closer to my desired pay. I'm making the worst decision of my life by not taking this job, etc., etc. I got a phone call about an hour later from the manager saying, "Look, I understand you may have reservations, but if you come in tomorrow, I can give you another $500. I hung up, and that was that. This place tried to get me, a recent engineering grad, to take a warehouse job that was pitched as the training program to become an engineer at nearly half the market rate for an engineer out of college. One that said they'd fire you for having a cell phone in the building, and that God forbid you have to go to a funeral, you need to take a vacation day. That sounds like a total nightmare of an interview. Being made to wait in the cold, getting rushed on a decision, and being offered way below asking salary, it's like they were trying to take advantage of you. And the fact that the owner even emailed you after, it's like he was trying to control you. It's good you didn't fall for it, and trust your gut. Story 9. I once had an interview with a company scheduled at 3. Company door was locked for the safety of clients, so I stood out there for around 5 minutes knocking and calling the office number. The person who was supposed to interview me finally came out and told me they were heading home for the day and that they would call me the next day. The next day, they called and offered me the job, and like an idiot, I accepted it. That level of unprofessionalism was only a soft start to what really went down in that company. During my less than 5 months working there, 6 of my coworkers quit. When I finally quit and had to sign paperwork, my manager told me their office hours were from 8 to 6 that day. I came into the office at 4, knowing it should not be busy at that time, and they were already gone for the day. So essentially, management did not keep to their schedule, and they were always hiring due to their crazy turnover rate. If that's the level of professionalism they're showing at an interview, I have to know what was going on during the actual job. What did you do? I don't need to know the name of the company. Just give me something. Story 10. They get visibly and vocally freaked out when you tell them that you have no social media. The follow-up question of everyone does, you have to, had me walk out. A company that wants access to my personal family-only social media platforms is not a company I want to work for. I separate my personal and professional life. They have no business knowing about me or my family and anything going on there. They do not need access to your Facebook, and should they gain it through another employee or other means, I would sue the hell out of them for violating my right to privacy. Story 11. Overall, poor ratings from bad employee reviews on Glassdoor. Seriously, that site exists to give employees a place to review their employer anonymously. Use that info. Someone responded to this comment saying, "If you see too many 5-star ratings in a short amount of time, HR is making fake accounts to boost the Glassdoor rating." Just another heads up. The old company I worked at had 1-star reviews every week for IT roles, and HR started making accounts to write 5 stars to counter it every time to make the company rating 3 or 4 overall. That's illegal, isn't it? I mean, it should be. Story 12. Frequently talking about lofty visions for the future of the company and how they want to share future benefits with current employees without a concrete roadmap for how to get there. I wasted a year burning myself out at my previous job because I took the owner's words at face value. It took me way too long to realize that he was very lazy and had no idea how to reach these lofty goals, but loved to talk about them to motivate his employees. I would bust my ass doing the work that needed to be done to grow the company and have my simple requests for help met with placating words so that I would just shut up and do it myself. To say the owners were blindsided and shocked when I gave my 2 weeks is an understatement. They thought my hard work was a complete buy-in, but didn't ever think a person with half a brain would expect tangible benefits for such hard work within a reasonable amount of time. Do not ever do work outside of the scope of your current role in the hope for a future payout. Sounds like your previous job was a total letdown. The owner was all talk and no action, and you ended up burning yourself out trying to make their big dreams a reality. And it sucks that you you were left to do all the work yourself, and your requests for help were met with empty promises. It's not cool that the owners were shocked when you quit. They should have known that your hard work deserved some real benefits, not just talk. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a story you'd like to share, please leave it in the comments below. Then be sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that when our next video is available, you'll be notified. For more of our videos now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.